Page 416. Let's take a look at the picture. It says a few 49ers became rich from the work on the hillsides and streams of California, but most gained little or nothing. So you had all these 49ers page on the previous page talked about how they all came in 1849. Thousands of people came to California, a lot of them in San Francisco. All these 49ers came looking for gold, but most got nothing. Very little gold, not worth much or nothing at all. Let's take a look at the biography before we read this. Charlie Parkhurst, born 1812, died 1879. Charlie Parkhurst was a successful whip, or stagecoach driver. During the gold rush, Charlie traveled to San Francisco and eventually drove for a stagecoach service. A dangerous job, whips faced mountainous terrain, storms, swollen rivers, and bandits. Parkhurst lost an eye after being kicked by a horse. Becoming known as One-Eyed Charlie, railroads began taking over stagecoach routes. So Parkhurst instead ran a saloon/livery stable and turned to logging and farming. Charlie died in 1879. As neighbors prepared the body for burial, they discovered that Charlie was female. Like some other women of the time, Charlotte had transformed into a man. Newspapers around the country told Charlie's story. In the West, such transformations may have been made for a variety of reasons. They gave women economic opportunities open only to men, or may have enabled different experiences or social freedoms living as a man. So we don't know exactly why Charlie pretended to be a man, but for a lot of women at the time period were not given many job opportunities. And definitely if they were given job opportunities, they were often paid less. Just as even today, women are still typically paid less than men. And that's a form of discrimination. So that may be the reason, we don't know. That's a guess. But because pretending to be a man may have given women a lot more economic opportunities. So that means opportunities for money. So they wouldn't have let her work as a stagecoach driver if they knew that she was a woman. No one would hire her. They would think that was too dangerous for a woman to be a whip or a stagecoach driver. That may be the reason. She may have chosen to dress as a man for another reason. We don't know for sure because again, no one knew that she was Charlie was female until Charlie died. So it's one of the many, but there's many examples of women pretending to be men, living life as a man, especially during wartime, because again, women were not allowed to fight as soldiers. So there's several examples of women joining war as soldiers, pretending to be men. All right. So before we go on to here, I'm going to look at determining meaning. What words are related to vigilante that could help you understand its meaning? So make sure we pay attention to vigilante when we read that. Let's see, and then going back to the picture, again, you can see miners working. They're looking for gold. These are 49ers. Let's go back to the reading. Most 49ers had no experience in mining. Whenever they heard that gold had been discovered at a particular site, they rushed to it and attacked the hillside with pickaxes and shovels. They spent hours bent over stream beds panning for gold dust and nuggets. Panning involved gently swirling water and gravel in a pan in order to remove dirt and perhaps reveal a small speck of gold. The California gold rush more than doubled the world's supply of gold. For all their hard work, however, few 49ers achieved lasting wealth. Most found little or no gold. Many of those who did find gold lost their riches through gambling or wild spending. Boomtown merchants, however, made huge profits. They could charge whatever they liked for food and other essential items because there were no other nearby stores that sold these products. Other merchants invented new products to meet new needs. For example, a Jewish-German immigrant named Levi Strauss sold the miners sturdy pants made of denim. His innovative Levi's were riveted for strength. Their popularity among the miners earned him a fortune. So the gold rush helped create the popularity of jeans, denim. And Levi's is still a brand of jeans sold to this day. and he's the one who made them popular. He sold denim pants to 49ers and made a very large fortune off of that. So very few people made money finding gold. Most of the people who made money were the boomtown merchants, the people who sold items for a much higher cost. And they made, some people made a fortune doing this. While the 49ers themselves made very little money. Let's see, is there anything else? I want to go over this part? Nope. All right, Gold Rush Society. Mining camps contained men of all backgrounds, but few women. Lonely and suffering hardships, many men spent their free hours drinking, gambling, and fighting. Mining towns had no police or prisons. As a result, citizens known as vigilantes formed committees to protect themselves. Vigilantes took the law into their own hands and acted as police, judge, jury, and sometimes executioner. One observer of vigilante justice was Louise Clapp, the wife of a doctor who lived in Indian Bar, a mining community on the Feather River. She wrote to her sister about a vigilante trial. So this is another primary source written by someone who was there. So she was in a mining community, and she wrote this in 1851. We see written by Louise Clapp, December 15th, 1851. So we're going to think about this primary source. We're going to analyze it. So let's look at the questions first. Number 1, analyzing points of view. What is Louise Clapp's opinion about vigilante justice? Number 2, determining meaning. What is meant by the majesty of the law in this context? What do the miners have instead? All right, so again, vigilante. This is done by citizens, not by actual police. No, not actually done by an official judge. So this is a vigilante trial. By this time, the exciting news had spread all over the bar. A meeting of the miners were immediately convened. The unhappy man taken into custody. A jury chosen, and a judge, lawyer, etc. appointed. At 1 o'clock, so rapidly was the trial conducted, the judge charged the jury and gently suggested, that they could do no less than to bring in with their verdict of guilty a sentence of death. Perhaps you know that when a trial is conducted without the majesty of the law, the jury are compelled to decide not only upon the guilt of the prisoner, but the mode of his punishment also. After a few minutes' absence, the 12 men who had consented to burden their souls with a responsibility so fearful returned, and the foreman handed to the judge a paper from which he read the will of the people as follows: that William Brown, convicted of stealing, etc., should, in 1 hour from that time, be hung by the neck until he was dead. So this is pretty dramatic. She's talking about this trial she witnessed where this man who was accused of stealing, they convicted him and immediately sentenced him to death by hanging with a rope. So, this was a very serious situation. And again, there's no really police or anything like that. They just make up the trial themselves. They choose someone to be a judge. And again, they ask the jury to choose the punishment. So that's, very interesting to see what they were doing without the normal legal system that was more common on the East Coast. Out here, they're still working on building society. They haven't really set up a full judicial system. So let's look at the questions again. What is Louise Clapp's opinion about vigilante justice? So, let's see. First she talks about how exciting it is, like the exciting news. But also, how difficult it must be to burden their souls. Burden means to carry this heavy weight. So fearful. It's a little scary as well. What else? What is meant by the majesty of the law? Let's look at the majesty of the law. Perhaps you know that when a trial is conducted without the majesty of law, the jury are compelled to decide not only upon the guilt of the prisoner, but the mode of his punishment also. So usually this suggests that that the jury is not responsible for deciding the punishment. They usually just decide whether the person's innocent or guilty. So here the jury decides the punishment as well. without the majesty of the law. So, again, they're kind of making up their own law here, the vigilante justice. There are no official courts and there are no official police. So they don't have that official majesty of the law. They're just doing it on their own. So again, they create their own committees. They take the laws into their own hands. Economic and political progress. The gold rush had lasting effects on California. Agriculture, shipping, and trade grew to meet the demand for food and other goods. Many people who arrived looking for gold stayed to farm or run a business. Rapid growth brought the need for better government. In 1849, Californians applied for statehood and wrote a constitution. The Constitution's ban on slavery, however, caused a crisis in Congress. Southern states opposed California's admission. Congress eventually worked out a compromise by which California became a free state in 1850. So, California admitted as a state in 1850. And during this time period, again, the issue was that balance of free states and slave states, because California was going to be admitted as a free state. But that's going to mess up the balance. If you read the other lessons, you know that each time they added a state, they were trying to wait for another state to keep that balance of the same number of free states and slave states. So when they added Florida, they waited for more territory. When they added Oregon, when they added Texas, they wanted to make sure they kept the number of free states and slave states the same. But when we added California, suddenly there were more free states than slave states. So this is going to cause some problems. The addition of California into the United States is considered one of the causes of the Civil War because it upset the balance of the number of free states and slave states. Checking for understanding. Number 1, explaining causes. Which two pieces of legislation dealt with land rights of the Californios? Which of the two laws harmed those rights? Explained. So, this goes back to the previous page. I'm not going to flip back just right now, but on the previous page, it talked about the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, which gave all that land, took all that land from Mexico and gave it to people in the United States. And then also the Land Law of 1851, which was harmful to Californios. So again, that pretty much took away a lot of their rights of land ownership in favor for people from the United States. Number 2, how did California gold rush lead to the expansion of cities? Well, again, because of the 49ers. The gold rush, people just rushed in 1849, and that huge number of people arriving looking for gold meant that more people, there's more cities. Alright, so now we're going to look at a religious refuge in Utah. Analyzing key ideas and details. Number 1, analyzing point of view. Is the author sympathetic to the Mormons? Explain your answer. Number 2, determining central ideas. Read the text under the heading, A Haven in the Desert. What role did the virtues of the Mormon community play in overcoming their circumstances? Guiding question. Why did the Mormons settle in Utah? So why Utah? While the gold rush was transforming California, change was also taking place in nearby Utah. There, Mormons, or members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, were building a new community and fulfilling their vision of the godly life. The Mormons move on. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was among a number of religious movements that sprang up during the religious awakenings of the 1830s and 1840s.